Okay, I'm going to wrap this video up. Again, I know it's going to be very long. It's probably going to be close to an hour long. I really don't like my videos to be that long. I really don't, but I did not want to cut off anything that this Lakota speaker had to say. For me, it may not mean anything to anyone else, but for me, it was important. And honestly, it is important whether anyone wants to listen to it or not. It is very important. There is so much that has happened, and she touched on so many different things, so much of history that is not in the school books. She touched on racism. There's so much she talked about, and it's important. It's a vital, important part of history that is not in school books. It is not told. And no matter what people say about reading a book, oh, you can go anywhere you want to by reading a book. Yeah, that's great. That's a great sentiment. And for those that can't go anywhere, reading a book and reading history and really diving into history, that's a great thing. But there's nothing in the world like being able to get an up-close and personal history lesson. Anyway, I'm going to end this video now, and I hope everyone has a good week. God bless. Peace.
My Lakota name is Wichakwe, which means woman who was born from the stars. My English name is Jessie. My maiden last name is Taken Alive. My married last name is Rencounter, and I come from the band of Lakota called the Hunkpapa Lakota. We have 7 bands of Lakota people. You may have heard of the name Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull, just like Crazy Horse, was a great leader amongst our people many years ago. Sitting Bull led our band of Lakota called the Hunkpapa Lakota, where I come from. Today, most of our people reside in the southern part of the Standing Rock Reservation, located up in north central South Dakota. I grew up on the reservation all my life, and as a young girl, my late grandfather, he talked to us about the importance of balancing and living in 2 worlds as a Lakota. He says it's important that we know who we are, know our ceremonies, know our language, know our songs as Lakotas. And so I grew up around that. I was very blessed and fortunate. But I also was encouraged by my late grandfather to pursue a college education. He set a great example for all of us. He became one of the very first educators here in South Dakota that was Native American. I followed his advice, and after high school, I went off to college at Black Hills State University. There I met my husband, and while we were attending school and stuff, we started our family very young. We've been married for over 20 years. We have 4 beautiful daughters, ages 20, 14, 12, and 5. Most patient man on earth. So, but living with all females. You know, my husband, my 4 daughters, myself, we travel extensively throughout the United States and Canada. We attend many different powwows. My husband, he serves as the master of ceremonies or the MC at these powwows, or he sings with championship drum groups. My 4 daughters and I, we all dance. We also have the opportunity, the privilege, and I say the responsibility to share with many different people throughout the world who we are as Lakota people. We share historical facts, we share modern day songs and dances. This has taken us all over the world, including places like Italy, Switzerland, down to South America. My favorite place to do this, though, is right here at home in these beautiful Black Hills. We're going to get back to the story, the history from our perspective of these Black Hills. I would like to address some common questions about us as Indigenous people. One of the first questions we always get is, do we call you Indians? Most of us, you know, collectively as tribes here in the United States, we like to call ourselves Indigenous or Native American. We like to save the word Indian for our relatives who live across the world from India. So there's a lot of different, it kind of saves some confusion and such, you know, but we also have different tribes. Over 560 federally recognized tribes, but at one time there was more tribes than that. There was estimated to be over 100 million indigenous individuals at one point in time, over 600 different tribes at one time. You can imagine the vast culture, the rich history, the languages that once walked upon this soil here many years ago. You know, we all have our own cultures, our own languages, our own customs and such. One misconception is people think that just because you're Native American or your ancestors were, that everybody lived in teepees or hunted the buffalo, which is false, you know. Our people did, but that's what you saw in a lot of those old Western movies, those John Wayne movies, right? A lot of people hunting the buffalo, living in teepees and such. And there's a lot of misconceptions, but there's a lot of our tribes that, you know, used to reside in different types of dwellings, like the earth mounds and such. A lot of people, a lot of tribes who did not hunt the buffalo, they were like gatherers, they were planters and such. And so our people here, though, we did hunt the buffalo. A lot of people also ask, what's the difference between your Lakota people and the Sioux people? In actuality, when you're talking about both of those names, you're kind of referring to the same group of people. Why? Because, you know, the federal government, when they started first federally recognizing a lot of our indigenous tribes here in the United States, they didn't come to us and ask us, what do you call yourselves? What's your name for yourselves? They kind of just started giving out names by hearsay. And a lot of these, most of these names, these federally recognized names, are derogatory. We don't like to use them. We don't call ourselves these. You know, an example of this is down in the Southwest. You've probably heard of them as the Navajo people. They live on the biggest reservation here in the United States, down in the Southwest area, but they don't like that name. Every person I talk to from that tribe, they say, you know, that's not our name for ourselves. That name comes from the Spaniards when they were coming up north and they ran into their people. And, you know, they gave them that name because their people would steal their horses. So that word Navajo actually means thief in Spanish. So their name for themselves, though, is the Dene. And that, in their language, that means the people or the people of the earth. That's what they usually prefer to call themselves. Likewise, here we like to call ourselves the Lakota people. People ask us, what about the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota? You know, when you're talking about those three groups of people there, that's what the federal government they refer to as the Sioux Nation. What's the difference between Lakota, Dakota, Nakota? Well, we're pretty much very similar people. We have very similar customs, very similar beliefs, ceremonies and such, and even very similar language. Now, our Lakota people, we have 7 bands of Lakota: Hunkpapa Lakota, Sitting Bulls people; Oglala Lakota, Crazy Horse Red Clouds people. You know, we have the Sichahu Lakota. You know, a lot of different Lakotas bands and such, and we reside in different reservations. So the Dakota, they have 4 bands. Today, most of them live East River, meaning the Missouri River running through central South Dakota. And the Nakota, who have 3 bands. When reservations were first being established, a lot of our Dakota and Nakota relatives did not want to be confined to a reservation. And so they fled up north into Canada, and a lot of them settled there. Today, the Canadian government, they recognize them as one of their tribes up there, and they call them their First Nations people, and they reside in what is equivalent to reservations here in in the United States, and they call them the reserves up there. Now, what's the difference between our language? A small language dialect. Now, if you're Lakota and you're a man, like my brothers or my late father, you're going to take the word. I think Coca-Cola might have stole that from us, huh? And if you are a Dakota, like my husband is, you know, you're going to take the L, replace it with the D, and you're going to say Koda. Can everybody say Koda? Yep. Comes from the Dakota, thus North Dakota, South Dakota. Likewise, our Nakota relatives are going to take the L or the D, replace it with an N, and they're going to say Kona. So, very similar language, just a small language dialect. We could still communicate with each other. Just listening to each other speak, we could tell which tribe we come from, if we're Lakota, Dakota, or Nakota. Now, these Black Hills, these are very special to our Lakota people. In our language, we call it the Chesapa or the Pahasapa, which basically just means Black Hills. We also refer to these Black Hills as the heart of everything that is. Now, we say there's important places here on Mother Earth that are vital and crucial to all of us. An example of this is down in South America, in the rainforest down there, the Amazon rainforests. as the lungs of Mother Earth. And they say that they're vital and crucial for all of us. They say that it benefits all of us. They say that if for some reason that rainforest were to disappear, we would all suffer the repercussions. Scientists say there's truth to that. We would be in big trouble if that rainforest disappears. Likewise, here in these beautiful Black Hills, our people have always referred to this as the heart of everything that is. The heart of Turtle Island, the heart of Mother Earth. If you're a sciencey person and you like to look at different things and such, you'd be surprised to find out that you can take modern day technology, like a satellite image or an aerial image from the top of the Black Hills. And when you take a look at it, you're going to see that it's in the shape of a human heart. Not Valentine Cupid heart, but the human heart. If you take pictures all throughout the 4 seasons, through spring, summer, fall, winter, and you play these images over and over like a video, it looks like this heart is beating. So depending on when the stars are aligned, our people come to these still in 2021 and for centuries upon centuries to these 7 sacred areas, and they conduct a different type of ceremony. Just like other cultures all around the world, we too, as Lakota people, believe that as it is here on Mother Earth, it is in the heavens or in the stars above. You can take a map of these 7 sacred areas, and when you take a look at it, there's going to be a mirrored image of the stars above that align directly with them at certain times of the year. When would we know when it's time? Well, when those stars would align. One of these 7 sacred areas you've probably heard of as Devil's Stories behind that area. If you ever to travel to Bear Lodge or Devil's Tower, the modern name for it, that's in eastern Wyoming, pretty close here to the hills. You would see that it's in a big shape of like a tree stump, and it's huge, massive. Very many stories behind that from our tribe and surrounding tribes as well too. Also, there's Bear Butte, Montopaha, which is by Sturgis. It's a very special place for our people as well too. Here, just to the north of us, is a place that is now referred to as Black Oaks Peak. Black Oaks Peak is the highest peak here in the region. It's about a 3.5-mile hike up. When you get to the top, they see that you can see into 4 different states: Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota. It's so high. So it's quite a hike. But when you get to the top, it's well worth it. It's beautiful. If you were to get to the top, you might see some of our relatives' prayers there. We ask that people not touch them, over at Bear Butte as well too. Those are prayers that are when they're in tobacco ties, different colored cloths and such. But our people still to this day in 2021, they make that hike up in March during the spring equinox, and they conduct a ceremony where we welcome back the thunder beings. Why? Because the thunder beings, who we consider our relatives or spirits, they bring with them rain, and rain is water. All of us here need water to survive. Our plant nation, our animal nation, and everything that's living here on Mother Earth requires water. We know what happens during a drought. A lot of things get affected, and we know what happened during the big drought here about 80 years ago. A lot of our ceremonies were outlawed and banned around that time, and there's stories amongst our people where they came to some of our medicine men and they asked them for their help. And so they performed this ceremony, and within a couple days, the thunder beings, they brought that water and they replenished and start bringing that drought ended. There's many stories amongst their people like that. Likewise, just to the south of us is a place that is now referred to as Wayne Cave. Unfortunately, that's a tourist attraction, but it's a very special place to us. Just like other cultures all around the world, we too as Lakota people have our own creation story on how our people came to be. Ours takes place here in these Black Hills, specifically at Wayne Cave. The shortened version of the story says that 101 years ago, that our Lakota people once lived way inside Mother Earth, and that 4 Lakota couples emerged out of that cave. When they got out here, they realized how beautiful it was, but also that it was very different. They didn't know how to survive. They went back down and tried to find their people who could not find them, so they were forced to come back out here and live. Unfortunately, because it was so different, they had a very difficult way of life. They lived almost a pitiful way of life at first. Lucky for them, somebody came along, prayers were answered, and they told them, as long as we are here, your Lakota people are going to be here as well. We're going to take care of your people, providing you food, clothing, and shelter. From that day, we took them as our relatives, and still to this day, we acknowledge them as our big brothers and big sisters. And who I'm referring to is the Buffalo Nation. For centuries upon centuries, our Lakota people were able to live an abundant type of lifestyle, utilizing everything from that buffalo. Everything had a purpose, from the horn to the tail. Nothing ever left behind, nothing ever wasted. You know, my husband, he likes to joke around, and he says, you know, Dakota people, it's historically in us to get everything at one shot. Our food, our clothing, our shelter. He says, that's why today as Lakotas, we like to hang out at Walmart. Which is kind of true. But, you know, speaking of the buffalo, a long time ago when our ancestors, our husbands, our fathers, our brothers, nephews, when they'd go off to hunt for these buffalo and stuff, there was always a ceremony that was done, and there was always customs that were done before, ahead of time, because sometimes our relatives would not make it home. These buffalo are huge animals, and you can imagine riding on a horse, you know, with a huge herd of stampeding buffaloes that are way taller than these horses. And so, you know, if they didn't come home, there was always a system that was set up. There was never orphans amongst our Lakota people. Why? Because our fathers' brothers were always considered our fathers. Our mother's sisters were always considered our mothers as well. There was no orphans. If something happened to our mother or father, there was someone that was always there to help take care of the children. Now, it was approximately estimated to be about 30 to 60 million buffalo roaming around here in the northern plains at one time. You know, when the first settlers were coming through, they would document in their journals. They said that they would have to stop and wait, set up camp, sometimes up to 8 days to wait for just one buffalo herd to pass by. There's about 80,000 buffalo in one herd. How many of you guys can wait 3 seconds at a stop sign today, huh? Right? Kind of shows us the fast-paced life that we live today. We're going to come back to these buffalo here in a little bit and see what happens to them. You know, around this time, you know how I said we had over 100 million indigenous peoples here at one time? That number had drastically dropped down to less than 1 million. They say anywhere between 500 to 250,000, or excuse me, 500 to 750,000 at one time were left around the late 1800s. A lot of conflict was happening when Western expansion was happening, as well as illnesses, diseases, viruses that our people were not used to, that were new and our bodies could not fight off. And so a lot of tribes went extinct, and if they didn't go extinct, they were on the verge of going extinct, including our Lakota people. Our numbers started to dwindle down, and our leaders said, you know, enough of our innocent children, women, and elders' lives are being taken. They got together, and there was a meeting in Fort Laramie, Wyoming in 1851, where the United States government gathered our leaders, and they said, we want to offer a peace treaty. And these treaties, which are the highest supreme law of the land, we will always honor these treaties. As long as the grass is green and the river flows, we will honor these. And so they made an agreement with their people, and you know, they told them, as you know, that as long as you let our people come by and pass through, you know, peacefully, you're going to be able to have this big allotment of land where you will be considered safe, and you can live like your ancestors have always lived and hunt the buffalo. This allotment of land is going to stretch all the way up into North Dakota, where the Cannonball River is, all the way to the east banks of the Missouri River running through central South Dakota, down to the North Platte River in Nebraska, and all the way over to the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming. This is going to be considered what they called Sioux territory. This is where we would be safe to hunt. Unfortunately, that did not last very long, because something was discovered here in the Black Hills. What was discovered? Gold was discovered. The gold rush began. We could not keep the people out. The United States government realized, hey, those Black Hills are very valuable. Not the way we see them valuable, but in a different way. They came back to our leaders and they said, you know, we already offered you this treaty, but we want to offer you to buy those Black Hills off of your people. We will offer you millions of dollars. You just sign here. But two things. Our people, first of all, they said they could not even grasp the concept of taking something that did not belong to anybody and selling it as your own, meaning Mother Earth. They said, we do not own Mother Earth. We all, as humans, belong to Mother Earth. Someday we will all go back to her. Second of all, they said this is our homeland. This is our birthplace, the heart of everything that is. It's sacred to our people. Creator put us here to protect this area. We could not sign that agreement. So we did not sign that agreement, and still in 2021 our Lakota people have not signed that agreement. The millions of dollars that were offered back then still sits in a United States trust fund and has now accumulated to hundreds of millions, if not close to billions of dollars. A lot of people ask us, you know, your people are having a really difficult time financially. A lot of your people are in poverty. Why don't your Lakota leaders just sign that agreement and accept the money? Well, in actuality, when you think about it, when you take that money and disperse it, it's only a few $1,000s for each Lakota person. That's going to be gone like nothing. Our people say there's no amount of money that will ever take us to make that agreement and sign that. We say the Black Hills will never be for sale. And so if we're talking about treaties, which is the supreme law of the land according to the United States government, this is the Dakota territory. And so we want to make sure that we share this, because this is something that you're never going to find in a public history book, in a public education class, history class. Why? Because it's purposely not put there. I think if it was, and this is what everyone was taught, I think we would want to advocate for people, our government, to do the right thing, right? To honor those treaties. So, back to the story. Our people did not honor, or we did not sign that agreement. And so what they did is they said, we're going to call it the Sell or Starve Act. If you will not sell those Black Hills, your people are going to starve. They wanted to enforce our people onto these small plots of lands called reservations. And they were sending a guy out by the name of General George Armstrong Custer. You see, Custer wanted to be the next president of the United States, and one of his platforms was he deemed himself a great Indian fighter. Along with him, he was bringing the 7th Cavalry of the United States. They were supposed to be invincible, and they were coming out to take care of what they called the Indian problem. They were coming out to not only take care and get rid of our people, but enforce our people onto these small plots of reservations. Well, our people got wind of this, and they heard that they were coming out to take more lives of our innocent people. And so our leaders, like Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, such, our leaders are very powerful people. They got wind of this, they band together, they were given direction and such. They band together with all the rest of our Lakota warriors and our leaders, as well as our allied tribes, the Northern Cheyenne and the Arapaho. And they met up with Custer and his 7th Cavalry in present-day southeastern Montana, June 25th, 1876. We know that as the Battle of Greasy Grass. You've probably heard of it as the Battle of Little Bighorn. This is the only time we like to use this term. We say, that's the day Custer and his cavalry got sued. Right? So, unfortunately, that was not enough, because our people were starving. You know how we said there was 30 to 60 million buffalo at one time? By the late 1800s, that had dwindled down to less than 1,000 buffalo. The buffalo were almost gone, they were almost extinct. This was strategically done by the United States government because they knew that our people relied on the buffalo. They said, you get rid of the buffalo, you get rid of their people. And so they offered, monetary gain for bringing in buffalo tongues, buffalo hides and such. Not only that, this is historical facts as well too, they offered money for bringing in the scalp of our people. And so a lot of people have that misconception that Native Americans were the ones that started that whole scalping thing. We started that and we learned that because that was done to our people, because that's how you prove that you got rid of a Native American child or person and such. And so our people were forced to these reservations, and they told, if you come to these reservations, we will give you food rations. There was no food left. Our people were starving. They had no choice. Reluctantly, they reported to these reservations. And here they said, as long as you stay on these reservations and you don't leave, because otherwise you're going to be considered hostile and your life could be taken. As long as you don't leave, we will offer your people, provide your people with health care, education, and housing. That still is an agreement today amongst our people. It's not the best quality at all. It's the lowest of the lowest that you can get. But, they came to our reservation, and they also said, we couldn't get rid of the Indian problem how we originally wanted to. We're going to get rid of the Indian problem in a different way. What we're going to do is we're going to kill the Indian, save the man. What that meant is they're going to wipe us clean of our cultural identity. They came to the reservations and they targeted our children. They came to the homes and told the parents and grandparents, and they said, if you do not give up your children, you will not get your food rations. Even though parents and grandparents refused, these children, as young as 3 to 4 years old, varying all the way up to ages 18 and 20, were taken by force and put on boats, trains, wagons, and they were shipped out hundreds of miles from these reservations to what we call residential boarding schools. Here's where the children were stripped of their cultural identity. Their hair was cut short, their traditional clothing was burned, and they were given different uniforms, and they were told not to practice their culture, especially do not speak your language. You have to speak English. Our children did not know English. They said if you spoke your indigenous language or you practiced your culture, you would be punished. A lot of trauma happened there. Every type of abuse imaginable had happened as well too. Thousands of children did not make it home. Parents, grandparents did not know what happened to their children. If you've been paying attention to the news, lately Canada has been making international news because this not only happened here in the United States, it happened up in Canada as well too, amongst our First Nation relatives up there, the tribes up there. And a lot of at these residential boarding schools, a lot of these graves have been discovered, unmarked graves where hundreds of children's bodies have been discovered. And a lot of people ask, gosh, that's old history. Why didn't you get over it? I'll tell you when the last boarding school closed, residential boarding school. 1996. Last residential boarding school closed. Still in this time, not necessarily history. It was also illegal for us to practice our culture here in the United States, and if we got caught practicing our ceremonies and such, not only could we be put in jail, but we could also have our life taken. Why do I share these historical facts with you? Like I said, this is something you're not going to find in a public history book or in a public education class. And I never share these facts with anybody to make anybody feel bad, because guess what? Nobody here is responsible for that, right? I only share these for educational purposes because as humans, no matter the color of our skin or the culture we come from, when we know better, we can do better. And we hope that history like that never happens again. And so I love what I do. I work in a school as a school counselor in elementary setting, but this is also my passion. I love to share our historical facts and educate people about the true history, and also celebrate our modern day culture, our songs, our dances with people, and showcase that as well, because my grandparents were not allowed to do this openly. And that's why I say it's a privilege and also a responsibility. So we're going to get into some modern day dances. We're going to celebrate that we're able to do this today freely and openly. And we're going to get into some dances you might see at a powwow. How many of you guys ever attended a powwow before? Show of hands. All right, a few people. There's a couple misconceptions about powwows. The first misconception being that people think you have to be Native American to attend a powwow, which is false. In fact, anybody's welcome to our powwow. Come listen to our songs, witness our dancing. We like to showcase that we're still here as Indigenous people. We still have our culture. The second misconception is that people think that it's some type of religious gathering, which is also false as well too. Powwows are more of our social gatherings. That's where we dance, we have fun, we eat food, make friends. Sometimes we meet our future husband or wife at these powwows. And because most powwows today are now competitive, we even dance and compete against other dancers based on our age category as well as our dance style. At each of these powwows, in the competitive powwows, we dance and compete for thousands of dollars. More recently, we've now been competing for brand new cars and vacation packages. So that kind of shows you anybody's welcome to come to these fun, sporting-like social events. You know, if you were to go to a powwow, you would notice that there's 3 main dance styles for us female dancers. We're going to showcase to you my favorite style of dance. It's called the jingle dress. The jingle dress is traditionally not a Lakota style of dance. Actually, it derives to us from our neighboring tribes over to the east of us. We know them as the Anishinaabe. That's their name for themselves as well too. You've probably heard of them by their federal government name, the Ojibwe people. Now there's slightly different versions of how the story goes of how this dress came to their people. I'm going to share the version that was shared with me from my good friend. She's an Anishinaabe woman, a jingle dress dancer, and she's the great-granddaughter of the first original jingle dress dancer. The story says that many years ago, there was a little Anishinaabe girl by the name of Maggie Whites. Maggie became very ill, very sickly, and it was an illness that was running rampant throughout the world. Nobody knew what types of natural medicines to give Maggie. Her grandfather, he loved his granddaughter so much, he was praying, and he also remembered that he was having a reoccurring dream since he was a young boy. In this dream, he was always shown a dress. On this dress hung different objects, and he was told that if he was able to make this dress, his family, for his little granddaughter, that this would bring healing to his granddaughter. These objects on this dress, when it was dancing, it would hit together and make a very beautiful sound, bringing healing. They made the dress. Maggie was so ill and so weak that she could hardly stand. They helped her dress. Her female relatives, they stood on each side of her with her arms out like this, and they held her up. As the singers started to sing on their drums, they said that they'd start helping Maggie dance. As the song progressed, Maggie became stronger and stronger, and soon she started dancing on her own. They said that by the time that evening was done, all the songs were done, that Maggie was healed. From that day, this dress has been called the medicine dress or the healing dress. Maggie did go on to live a long life, becoming a mother, a grandmother, even a great-grandmother, passing away in the early 1990s. But the story of this dress, the story of this healing, when it first happened to her as a young girl, it spread like wildfire all across the United States and throughout Canada amongst the hundreds of different tribes. Many of our tribes, including our Lakota people, we've adopted this into our own culture. Today we utilize this at powwows. Every tribe does. In fact, a lot of people ask us if this is a medicine dress or a healing dress. Why do you utilize this at your social dances for competition dancing? Which is a fair question. But even the Anishinaabe who also utilize this at powwows will say, you know, it doesn't matter where you dance. You can be at an Anishinaabe jingle dress ceremony, a powwow, or even a presentation like today. When a young girl or woman dances and she puts on this dress, you know, healing energy still comes from this. Those of us that are honored to wear this style of dress and dance this style, we always make sure that we remember first and foremost the origin and the purpose of this dress. And so we carry ourselves in a good way when we have it on. Especially we watch our thoughts when we dance, because we never know who's going to receive that healing. It's a very beautiful sight to see if you're ever at a powwow and you see dozens of jingle dress dancers dancing out in the middle. It's the sound of the jingles, of thousands of jingles in time to the beat of the drum. It's beautiful. It sounds very beautiful. Sometimes at these powwows, they will ask us as jingle dress dancers to come out in a circle and dance to that side step, which is the original type of dance that this jingle dress belongs to, and pray for healing for a sick relative of someone in that indigenous community. So just like anything in life throughout time, things have evolved, and so has the jingle dress style of dance. We have two different styles. We have what we call the original or old style, and these are dancers. They come to powwows, they still dance and compete as well too. Their dance style is a little bit more smoother, beautiful, very graceful. Nothing too fancy about their footwork. Very small steps, and we also have what we call contemporary dancers, like myself. We like to get a little bit fancier with our footwork. We like blingy materials when we do on fabrics, and we also wear eagle plumes in our hair and such, and we also dance with the eagle tail fan. A lot of people ask us about the importance of the eagle to our culture, but you know, as Lakota people, we've always believed that the eagle is our special relative who's responsible for carrying our prayers up to the Creator. Creator then takes those prayers, touches that eagle, and so we acknowledge that these plumes and these feathers have been blessed by our Creator. So we hold them in high regard. Not only do we utilize them at powwows, but more importantly, we utilize these feathers and plumes in our ceremonies.
Hi, this is the conclusion of this video, and that's gonna wrap it for tonight. I am at a Holiday gas station right now. I need to go in. I need to pick up something to drink, and I need to get my bed ready and get to my final stop at the Flying J. Anyway, eat. I haven't eaten in a while, long time, since 1 o'clock, peanut butter crackers. That's it. Anyway, and this, again, was part 1. The next one will be part 2. Anyway, and I'll have to add an intro to that. Anyway, I hope everyone has a good week. God bless. Peace.